One thing that we are loving about the second Trump term is that Trump isn't the only one out there trying to defend himself, to make his case. He's got a cabinet of people who are not only very skilled at defending a political position and communicating that political position, but they seem to relish it. They seem to enjoy actually being the tip of the spear together as a team. And we saw it demonstrated no better than yesterday in the Oval Office. President Trump sitting there on the straight back chair next to the fireplace, and he's got the president of El Salvador, President Bukele, with him. And of course, they bring in the media. Now, you'll remember these little photo ops back when Biden was president. He would sit and stare off into space, hoping that the ketamine wouldn't wear off before the time came where he had to actually say something. He would sort of giggle because all he saw was colorful, shapeless blobs in front of him, screaming questions at him. It was a fun time. He was on shrooms. Anyway, very different with President Trump. Kaitlan Collins of CNN wanted to ask a question, a really important question, about the Maryland man. And here's how it went.
Go ahead. Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CNN. Low rated. Which one is it?
The name was mistaken for his health.
Well, let me ask Pam. Would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
All right. So will you return him as the follow-up? Let's pause there. We went through this quite a bit yesterday with Stephen Miller's masterful performance on the lawn in front of the Oval Office yesterday with the media. You remember that. This happened about an hour later. I swear to God, I texted Kevin McMahon, our great producer here, and said, I almost want to go live again just to go over this press conference, what happened in the Oval. And he said, we'll do it tomorrow. It'll be great. And that's what we're doing right now. But just to reiterate a couple of things here, because everyone's like, well, how do we know he's MS-13? He says he's not MS-13. I would like to count on just one hand right now in front of you how many members of the MS-13 gang, now deemed a terrorist organization, admit in front of a judge in open court that they are, in fact, members of MS-13. Here we go. There it is. In fact, even further, I'm going to count for you the number of MS-13 gang members who have MS-13 tattooed almost literally on their face or somewhere else on their body, who admit in open court under oath in front of a judge that they are, in fact, members of MS-13. That same MS-13 that's tattooed on their face. Here's how many of them admit to it. There it is. They all deny that they're members of MS-13. So what do we have to go on here in America with the rule of law? Well, we have a process, and then we have judges make determinations. And in this case, two different courts said, yep, he's MS-13, which, as you know, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, elected by all of us, has in fact determined that MS-13 is a terrorist organization. Immigration judges don't matter at this point. This is national security. This is the commander-in-chief. And that's what the Supreme Court reiterated. In fact, that's now what we'll go to as President Trump, it's great here, says, hey, Stephen Miller, I think you've got something to say about this, don't you?
You are doing a great job. Thank you, Pam. Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Could you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the president could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world. And I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan.
But the Supreme Court is asking to, and what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel a foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Like,
No version of this legally ends up with an ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your question to that, per the court, can only be directed to him.
All right, so let me jump in here because, again, we just need to reiterate things because, sadly, all of the people with their journalism degrees from Northwestern or USC or where have you, they're on television, they're reading teleprompters that have been fed information that is wrong and false. What you just heard is the truth. Oh, but there was a unanimous Supreme Court decision that said that Trump had to return this guy back to the United States. That's not true. You can see, these are public documents. Pull up the Supreme Court decision, search on the word return. It doesn't exist. The only word, as you just heard them say a couple of times, was facilitate. Facilitate. All right. What that means is if El Salvador wishes to send him to the United States of America, and let's not say back to the United States because he didn't come from here. He admitted himself that he came here illegally. We're going to get into all the details a little bit later in the program. But the word facilitate just means, as you heard from Attorney General Bondi, yeah, okay, if you release him and you want to send him here, we'll send a plane for him. Here's what happens. They send a plane for him. They put him immediately into custody. They put him in front of a judge. They determine that has already been found twice in open court that he's a member of MS-13 and he gets deported. And if you don't want to send him to El Salvador, then you can send him to, Gitmo. You can send him to Gaza. You can send him anywhere. I don't understand why Democrats and the media are so willing to go to the mat on this story when the vast, vast, vast majority of Americans just see the administration, the president and his team going all in on protecting our nation and protecting our borders and enforcing our laws after 4 years of, I'll say it, chaos. But they're bound and determined, and we're bound and determined to deliver the truth to you, the facts to you, because you're getting a lot of misinformation, disinformation, willfully from other avenues. All right, so now this continues because everybody wants a piece of this. And Kaitlan Collins still has not quite read the room here. She continues to follow up. Well, are you going to return him? Well, are you?
Se lo liberaría, pues.
if as a King President Bukele, do you plan to refer?
Well, I'm supposed to be not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right? They tell me how can I return him to the United States? Like, could I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
Releasing inside.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. We're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into it.
Can I just say I love this moment because all the reporters turn to Bukele and say, well, are you going to release him? And he's like, he's a criminal. He's a terrorist. He's an MS-13 guy. We don't release those people. You might do that here, but we're not nuts. We've learned. The reason people were fleeing El Salvador in droves to come to America is because there were murders going on every block because of people like this. Now you want us to return him? I like the incredulity that he displays in his answer is so great. It's like, what is wrong with you people? Of course we won't. But then you flip over to, ABC News and they're all wringing their hands saying, well, this is awful that this person won't be released, that this person won't be facilitated and returned back to America. And here's the president of El Salvador saying, what is wrong with you people? You're nuts. Why would you want to release him? It's just so great. And then Trump, says, yeah, they would love this. They would love to have the criminal.
There's a fascinating.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the QPP is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that was refusing to take people back of places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what Mr. Peasley held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Zedin court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel a foreign policy function in the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said so likely to be returned, he would have filed. So I don't know so much based out.
How long do we have to answer this question from you? Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead.
It is why nobody watches them anymore, but it's why people are coming here in droves to watch us watch them and make fun of them. It's such an amazing moment. And I want to believe that was planned out. Like, isn't all right, listen, the press is going to be there. They're going to ask about this. All right. So I'm going to turn to you, Pam. You started out. Then I'm going to turn to Stephen. And then we'll come back. We'll get Bukele in there. You want in on this? See? Claro? Okay. And then I'll come back to Marco. Marco, you want in? Absolutely. We'll get Marco in then there. And then if she continues to press, then Trump, he'll finish the kill shot. He'll finish it off. But they scripted it out. They planned it. It was all outlined. That's what I want to believe. Actually, I want to believe it was spontaneous. Either way, it was beautiful. And normally I would say that Trump had the cherry on top moment there. But that wasn't the cherry on top moment. Actually, the cherry on top moment is right here. Take a look.
Like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country, actually.
Before I get to you, I just want to say, for the record, since we heard President Trump say in the Oval Office that CNN hates our country, CNN does not hate our country. That should go without saying. I've been here for 32 years, and I see a rhetorical device in him trying to.
Yeah. All right. It's funny, the language used there, and we're just going to break that down real quickly here. Dana Bash, when she says she's been here 32 years, she means CNN, not in America. I'm pretty sure she was born here. I just want to clear that up because she said, referring to our country, I've been here 32 years. She means CNN. While she was at CNN, by the way, she had an affair with a married man, John King, who's also on CNN. And then they had a baby, and then he left her for another woman. It's very tawdry. There's a lot of Me Too situations that go on in network news, but they're always lecturing you about that stuff. Anyway, look at the language Dana Bash uses here. It's fascinating.
President Trump say in the Oval Office that CNN hates our country. CNN does not hate our country. That should go without saying.
That part right there. CNN does not hate our country. That should go without saying. Funny thing about stuff that should go without saying, you shouldn't have to say it. Why did she say that? I mean, was that her idea? Did the executive producer of the show say, hey, Dana, when we come back from the Oval, please make sure you remind everybody watching that we don't hate the country? Did the head of the network get on the phone? All right, listen, when you get back there, make sure that Dana reminds everyone that we don't hate the country. Super important. That's the thing about things that should go without saying. When you then say it, you're proving that maybe someone did need to say that thing that should go without saying because it doesn't seem like that thing is true. This thing being that they love our country, or for that matter, don't hate our country. Right? It's like, why didn't Dana Bash say, you just heard President Trump say, we hate our country, but I mean, just watch us. Obviously, that's not true. She didn't even say that, which would have been a passive way of doing it. No, she actually had to go out of her way and say, really, really, it's true. We don't. It should go without saying, but she said it. And our friends over at Media Research Center, they picked up on that, and they had a bit of a fact check. You see, Dana Bash thinks it should go without saying that CNN doesn't hate our country, and yet at the same time, this is the kind of thing CNN puts on the air.
Here's a breaking news. We live in a racist, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic country.
Everything they're doing runs against making America great.
Well,
it was never great, so I'm not going to say the again part, but making America great.
Kicking off the Independence Day weekend, President Trump will be at Mount Rushmore, where he'll be standing in front of a monument of 2 slave owners and on land wrestled away from Native Americans, told that be focusing on the effort to, quote, tear down our country's history.
They strongly believe, these human smugglers, that this is their chance to enter the United States. This is their chance at the American dream. That's why they risk everything, only to find out that it's all a lie.
And when we got our freedom, our quote unquote freedom, we were never restored whole, which is why you hear about reparations. So until the United States atones for that and makes good on that, we're still living in a racist country.
Yeah, good job, Newsbusters. Media Research Center, they're always the best. I mean, you see a quick little put together montage like that, and you wonder, maybe it doesn't go without saying. Maybe that's why Dana Bash made sure that she rushed in front of her viewers and said, oh, no, really, we don't hate our country. Forget about all the things that it said on this network. Forget about the paid employees saying things that sure make it sound like they hate our country. Don't believe any of that. Believe me, I'm Dana Bash. I've been here 32 years. Oh, what a day it was at the White House. Truly beautiful.